Hi friends, it's Star Thrifter, and this video is in regards to keywords and the top 10 keywords right now for listing on eBay and Poshmark. And I have a few extra here. I think I have more than 10. But listing the top 10 or highlighting them. And do keywords matter? Write in the comments what you think. We'll get right on to it, and I will give you my opinion. I'll give you the first five top keywords, and then I'll talk about, what I think, whether it's important or not to have those in your listings, and then we'll continue on. The first one that right now that's been trending, and this is for clothing, and the top one right now would be whimsigoth. Whimsigoth is a very popular style right now. It's been very trendy. That's one of the top ones that'll go up there. These aren't exactly in the exact order of, popularity, but that is one of the top ones. The next one is Y2K. You probably have heard about it a lot, and it'll be styles that would be popular during that time. That's been an extremely trendy style, and it still is currently right now. I don't know for how long. The next one that kind of goes right with that is 90s. 90s has really been trending. And if you pick up clothing, one of the things that you would want to be looking for would be like Abercrombie and Finch or a holster, and it would be like the tank tops. They were more of a baby doll, maybe just a little bit longer, V-neck with the lace trim, lace bottom. Those are popular. There's some other ones that sell for quite a bit of money. Look under holster and Abercrombie and Finch, and you can figure out what items are selling for quite a little bit of money. That's three. The next one is croquette. I don't think I pronounce it correctly. It's Coquette, and that's more of like a fitted style type look. That's been very popular. And the next one would be I would say it's still popular. It's fairy. Fairy is very popular. Something that's very whimsical looking, kind of fairy looking. That's been very popular. I think we're at 4 now. And the next one would be I just thought of, and just whimsical. Whimsical in general. That instead of the first one I mentioned was whimsy goth. This one would be whimsical. Those have all been the top 5 that's really been important. Now, do keywords matter? And it is a big question. And, I really don't, I mean, we've been using keywords for a while, but I think they've really vamped up lately. You hear a lot more about it. And I think the reason for that is because there's a lot of competition now in selling, reselling, in probably any, category that you sell in. And you're going to want to look for keywords in any category you sell in. And if you can't come up with keywords, you could probably Google that. Or even on eBay, under item specifics, if you click on theme, you can just scroll and it just gives you like all of them that they have listed. And it might not pertain to what you're selling, but it could, if you're trying to think of keywords for, different areas. But this, is focusing on clothing today. And anyhow, I've always had some keywords, and like on Poshmark, you have a choice at the bottom to list, like 3 keywords. And I've usually always used all 3. Once in a while, I didn't. But now I've really vamped up on using keywords, trying to get some up in the title. And I've even eliminated like long sleeve for like a top to put in a keyword. I don't know if that's a smart thing because people might be, looking for the long sleeve versus a short sleeve. But I wanted to get some keywords in that title, because by the time you put in the brand and then you put in, I always write women's, and then the size, and then, or I'm not saying in this order, whatever order works for you. I usually put brand, though, what it is, like if there's a style name for it, and then top, and then women's, and size, and keyword, and on the very end, I put my own little thing on there for inventory if I have enough room. But under item specifics, under that theme, you can add a lot of them there. And then I've been adding lately a few in the description, but not that often on eBay, because what I do is I copy my title, and then I paste it on the description area. So if I already have some keywords in the title, it'll be in the description. I do my listings creating them using templates. eBay, you can set up some templates where you can eliminate a lot of those item specifics or put in something that would pertain to all that you're listing or whatever. And but I do it all on the desktop, that portion of it. I take the photos on my phone, I do the listings on the desktop, and then I do the photo editing and uploading from my phone, on there, and then I, publish them or whatever, list them onto eBay from there. And on Poshmark, I do it all on my phone. Anyhow, but keywords, do they matter? And I think it really does, because there's a lot of competition, and things have really changed in the resale market, and I've noticed it within like the little bit less than a year. Things have really declined. I've been selling since like 2014, 15. I started out part-time. I sold a little bit of everything, but then I, went more towards the clothing. And, the last few years, I had pretty much a percent. I mean, you have your highs and low days, things like that. And I was listing less because I was making less money and wasn't thrifting as much. And that's going to affect it, because I'll tell you what, number one thing, the more you list every day, the more you're going to sell every day, regardless of everything else that you do. As long as they're decent products. You don't want to put up anything. It used to be that you could put up a lot of stuff that was just very mediocre, and it would sell on eBay in the clothing. I think those days are pretty much gone, unless you're selling them for dirt cheap, like under $5 or something like that. That's a lot of work for just, $5, because if you sell something for $5, you got to pay eBay fees on that, plus on the shipping portion of it. And then you got to figure out how much supply it took you to, ship the item, and then how much you paid for the item. And then you have to pay sales tax at the end of the year on that $5. By the time you get down, that's only going to be a couple of dollars. But hey, whatever works for you. If you sell a ton of them a day, it would be worth it, because that's kind of how Whatnot's like. A lot of people sell on Whatnot, and they're selling them for really low prices, but they're selling high volume, and that makes up for it. Anyhow, I think the landscaping has really changed on eBay, and you got to really pay attention now if you want to continue on and have, continuous sales for your store, especially in the clothing department, because that's the area that I, know more of, because that's the area that I sell, items. And it's really changed. It's not like it used to be. And there's even stuff that I used to sell that used to sell really quite quickly, and it doesn't anymore. And you've always had that little bit, brands come and go. Like, Lululemon was really great for a long time, and now it's really low. Say Athleta, really low. But I mean, in general, just a lot of the items that I could sell. I sell a lot of plus size clothing, and that's not always pertaining to the brand, and just sales way down. I think you really need to start looking up sell-through rates if you haven't before, because that's going to make a huge difference. At least that's the way I going to start, steering my business. But anyhow, I think that these keywords are going to be very important though, because one, it brings that buyer that's looking for that style, to your listing. And if you're adding a lot of keywords and some of the other sellers aren't, maybe, yours will come up for where somebody is looking, not to be mean towards them, but I'm just saying, I think the more keywords that you can add, it's going to be beneficial. Now, you don't want to add keywords that don't pertain to it, and things like that, especially if you get into where, you don't want to add. I would not ever recommend adding like another, well, it's like I had those LL Bean shirts. If you watched my fifth video like last week, I think I had one or two where I showed, and it was an LL Bean pullover, and it was a button quarter, and it had the logo here where it looks a lot like a Patagonia item. You wouldn't ever want to use Patagonia as a keyword, because it's not a Patagonia item. I would recommend not doing that. Anyhow, we'll get right on to continuing on with the keywords. These are some of the other ones, I guess, are, supposed to be relatively, popular, or just some, for you to, think about using. One that I use quite often is Corp Core, and that'd be for like office business. And I use the word professional. And sometimes I would just put office wear or things like that, but I've been using those two more for that style of clothing. These are not in any order. The next one is indie. I haven't used that, and I need to really think about, that style and maybe start using that. Another one is retro. Now, it's really hard to describe what really is retro. Anything, I guess, over 20 years, because anything over 20 years would be vintage, but there's a lot of retro areas, but retro, is one. Event, I have used that for very formal looking outfits, things that are dressy. Event would be one to use. Norm core. And that'd be just for a basic thing. And I was using that for a while and I kind of forgot about it again now recently, but I need to start using that again. Another one that I use for mature clothing, for like your plus size and things that are for, over a little bit older women, not, teenage, style looking, is mature. And I use that. And it doesn't have to be plus size clothing. It could be any clothing that's a little bit more, like Susan Graver is one that I will list because of their liquid knit can be popular. And I use mature a lot, on that one. I use that mature a lot. Renaissance is another one that you can use. And that kind of falls in close to that, croquette looking style. Milk Maiden and Maiden was very popular there for a while, but I've used that a lot and not really gotten any traction on anything that I've noticed with that, but some people have. And that's something you'd want to check out. Milk Maiden or Maiden, you could try. Bloom Core, I guess, would be something that's more like, floral and flowy. I've not ever used that. It would have to be floral. Alternative, and I've not used that before, and I need to research that and really, maybe something that looks more alternative outfit. I remember when I was in school, there was more that alternative style was starting to become popular. It seemed like I kind of related to, it was kind of like the punk rock, and then it was stepped down from that wild punk rock. It was like alternative. That's how it used to be. Oh no, it is now. Um, Eclectric. I probably don't pronounce that quite right. And that could be a combination of eras, it says. The next one is quiet luxury. Quiet luxury would be a nice one to use. And for some reason, I don't seem to remember to use that one. And I need to start using that one. Another one that I have been using quite often more lately is Old Money. And that would be something, especially if it's in some of the brands that you're familiar with and the style correlates with it, like maybe some of your Ralph Lauren. It doesn't have to be that brand, but something that's more like tweed, classical preppy. That looks like, Old Money. Another one that I've been using quite often too is Glam and Glamour. Those are some other ones. But anyways, that would probably give you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, a few different ones. I was trying to think if there's any other ones, I knew we would go over the 10 or whatever, but I wanted to make sure that you kind of knew, at least some of the top 10. But I do really think that keywords is making a difference. And it's really going to make difference going forward. Write in the comments what you think about that. And write in the comments how your sales have been doing over like the last 8 months. How have they been doing? I've noticed a huge change on eBay, but like I said, my listing, amounts had changed some, and that's going to make a difference, because like I said, you're always going to have highs and lows. But what I've been noticing now, even on days when I have been listing, however, I need to get consistent where it's 7 days a week for like many months in a row, to really bring this up. But lately, I mean, like I've mentioned before, you used to be able, if you're listing like 20 a day, you'd always sell about 10. It was always about 50, about half of what you listed, you would usually sell per day. Listed, consistently 20 a day for a long period of time, you'd sell about 10. It was supposed to eventually come up even if you continued on. I didn't ever get to that point where it come up even, and I don't think I have ever had a day, well, yeah, maybe if I listed just like one item or something like that here or there, then I may have more than one sale that day. But as a rule, like when I was listing like continuously 15 or continuously 20, I don't know if I've ever had a day, maybe I don't remember, where it ever went over 20. It's anyhow. But Now, going to focus more on the sell-through rate. And you have to pay a little bit more when you go to thrift stores, because I like to shop when things go to a dollar tag. And by the time, you may find a few there, especially if it's something that people don't really recognize. But other than that, I'm going to have to start paying a little bit more for the stuff, but get it to sell, because you don't want a lot of old inventory where it's sitting for long periods of time, because that kind of pulls your store down, it says, and then eBay might not send you as much traffic, supposedly. Anyhow, hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you'd like, you can subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. And if you could push the thumbs up button, I'd greatly appreciate that too. Many prosperous sales to you. Have a great day. Thank you.